What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is game day in the Steel City. Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their preseason home opener. These two teams got together for a little joint practice a couple of days ago. I'm sure there was a lot of valuable experience to be gleaned from that. But we have a game to talk about. So I want to fire it up about this one. Want to jump on here, preview this one real quick. Some things I'll be watching for. Overall, it sounds like Mike Tomlin, game plan, pretty much status quo. All the guys that were in street clothes last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the opener are going to be on the sidelines again today. But with the exception of maybe Nick Herbig, I think he said that he would consider playing him depending on how many reps he was able to get in that joint practice setting. So we'll see if he dresses. But overall, a lot of starters missing from this one. Mason Rudolph's going to get the ball first. But I am excited to see them go up against this Bucs team who's going to be down Baker Mayfield, no Mike Evans, no Levante David. But I really do think their general manager, Jason Light's, really done a really nice job with this roster. I think that this is probably one of the best 7 or 8 rosters in the NFL, I think. Probably the favorite, I would say, to win their division and to be a playoff team again this season. So a lot to talk about with this one. Just before we jump into it, if you guys could, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop me a comment. All that stuff is greatly appreciated on my end. It allows me to continue to bring you guys the best Steelers NFL draft content that I can possibly provide. But overall, just going through the film from last week's game, I was really impressed with a number of different players, some of which I'll talk about again. But just it was good experience for the rookie class in general. I mean, you got to see a guy like Jack Sawyer literally start and finish the game. That's incredibly rare for a preseason type of setting. Just with a lot of the outside linebackers not dressing, gives a lot of reps to a young guy that probably needs them as he gets acclimated to this level of competition. Got to see a lot of reps from Derek Harmon as well. He played over 20 snaps. I expect that to continue. But this Bucs unit is, like I said, it's going to be a good barometer for where the Steelers, at least depth pieces, are at this point in time. I mean, last year you look at the Bucs offense, they were 6th in rushing EPA, 6th in rushing success rate. I think we're going to see some of their starters, hopefully some of their starting offensive line play. And I think it's going to be a good test for them in terms of being able to stop the run. Everybody knows about Todd Bowles, like his maniacal tendencies on the defensive side of the ball, just like a lot of crazy blitzes and the fire zones and stuff like that. Typically in the preseason, you don't see as much intricate or exotic looks like that for the most part. And I think that's why the joint practice settings can be really beneficial, especially with a team like this that plays a really drastically different style of ball than the team that you are, just because all through training camp you're practicing against the same system over and over every day. It's good to get a different look in a controlled environment, especially like in a joint practice setting where, again, you're willing to try more things, and because you don't have to worry about putting it on tape for other teams to kind of see what your identity and philosophy is going to be like going into the season, especially because they have a new offensive coordinator as well with Liam Cohen going to Jacksonville. So overall, I just thought the operation was really clean. Not a lot of penalties. They took care of the football. It was really nice to see them go out and get an opening drive touchdown score last week. Again, Mason Rudolph's going to get the start again. Did a film room on that drive. So if you haven't checked that out on the channel, please make sure that you do so. Really was excited to dive into the film room stuff again. Just having new all 22 to watch made my week a lot more enjoyable, to be honest with you. I was really excited about that. But just from a rookie perspective, I thought that Y.A. Black was really the star, I felt like, honestly, going back and watching the tape. I mean, he only played like 8 to 10 snaps, but I don't know how he could have possibly played any better. You saw his length on display. He did a really nice job setting the edge against the run, being able to lock guys out with his arm length and then chase the ball down. I thought him and Harmon both showed, well, and Sawyer to a different degree, showed really nice hustle and effort throughout the game. Pass rush was a little bit slow in the first half. I thought those guys took a while to kind of get rolling, but that's what the preseason's for, right? You want these guys, especially all these rookies, young guys, to figure out, okay, like, what's my pass rush plan going to be? How am I going to win at this level against bigger, better athletes, things like that. So overall, really impressed with YEA. He had it looked like maybe like an arm or elbow injury. He was in like a little bit of a brace earlier this week. So I'm not sure how much he's going to play, if at all, today. But I really want to see him back out there in action because even some of the pass rushing reps just were things that were not really on display at Iowa. Like he's not the quickest guy off the ball, but the fact that he was able to kind of dent the pocket with his power was really encouraging. And kind of talking a little bit about Derek Harmon, I think it was definitely a quieter debut than maybe what I anticipated. He had some slow burn rushes down the stretch there in the second half, and kind of got going a little bit. But he talked about just getting his feet underneath them, and some of the things that I thought was really interesting was just in the first, I would say, quarter alone, they ran three different TT, so tackle stunts with him and Keanu Benton. I think that there was some encouraging things to be learned from that. I think that usage is going to be interesting. Just those two guys continue to develop that chemistry throughout the preseason will be nice. I thought Harmon did some nice things as the crasher, in particular. I think the first time they ran one of those stunts, he did a really nice job, like ripping through, charging at the guard, and then also trying to hold his arm with his rip move. That way, Keanu Benton can loop around. He wasn't able to get a pressure on it necessarily, but it was something that I thought veteran kind of savvy move. If it was a quick game, I think maybe you could have got at least a hit on the quarterback. And speaking of Keanu Benton, this is a guy that's had a really quiet summer. Really, I haven't heard like very much about him at all. He didn't practice a ton when I was up there in Latrobe for Steelers camp a couple of weeks ago. I'm just kind of wanting some flashes, something. I don't necessarily think that his preseason debut was bad. I kind of know that Keanu's at least going to be a solid starter for this team, but I do think it's worth noting that Mike Tomlin decided to sit Joey Porter Jr., decided to sit Nick Herbig, and he played Keanu Benton. So I think that at least like gives us an idea of like how the coaching staff views him in comparison to his other draft mates. Kind of bring that up because again, you're going into year 3. A lot of these guys, especially the non-first round picks, they're going to be extension eligible next season. So it kind of could give you a little bit of a early sneak peek at the pecking order in terms of who they would prioritize in a contract situation. Now, again, we're really early in this one, but I would just like to see something from Keanu Benton from a pass rush perspective. We talked about him earlier in the offseason, just continuing to develop and not be so over-reliant on that club swim move or that club rip move, especially considering he can really only do that move from the right. Just want to see continued progress, especially against the run as well. But first green dot experience for Peyton Wilson at the NFL level. He made that really nice run stop early in the game on the first drive. I thought that was a really heady play by him. Did a really nice job. The guard was kind of leaning and had his weight distribution, and his stance was just a little bit awkward, so he could kind of tell that he was pulling around the formation. Ended up beating him to the spot, making the play. So, Peyton, I was really, really impressed by what I saw from him in training camp, and I'm hoping that he gets a little bit of run today, but I'm pretty bullish on like what his development could be and could mean for the Steelers front seven once we get into the regular season. Just some other guys to kind of watch for. Brandon Eccles. I mentioned YA was probably the most surprising player, I guess, in the debut, but probably the best player for either team was probably Eccles. He had a really nice performance, did a really nice job. He came downhill, made a tackle in the backfield on a little check down pass. Did a nice job playing blocks with physicality. That was something that I really didn't think was kind of in his bag. And then he had the really nice near interception where he's the cloud corner and cover 2, kind of working that smash concept, almost picked that ball off. I think that was off Mullins as well. But the interesting part about that is during practice this week, he got some reps at slot corner. Really, up until this point, he's exclusively been playing outside. Now, that could mean a couple of different things, right? Like you're just trying to cross-train the guy that is going to be your top backup for the regular season. I think that is good. This is what the preseason is for. Work those things out, give guys those reps. Eccles is a guy who spent the majority of his time playing on the boundary throughout the NFL, did play a little bit in the slot. I didn't think his tape was as good inside as it was outside, but it could also mean I thought Beanie Bishop kind of struggled a little bit on defense last week. And I just wonder what that means for him. But I would really like to see Eccles in the slot just against this Bucs team, who I think has pretty good depth at wide receiver. They've got Emeka Ibuka, so maybe we get a couple of series with him in the game. Another guy like Jalen McMillan, who I was pretty high on coming out of Washington. Those will give us like valuable reps with Eccles in the slot. And I'm just interested to see, if he can continue that momentum. He's had a really strong camp. And even though he's not necessarily going to be counted on to be a starter with all the veterans that they've got, Slay, Porter to a different degree, and then, of course, Ramsey, just it's been a long time since I feel like Pittsburgh's had a corner, a CB4 that they can honestly count on. I mean, there's been years, I think even last year, where they've had their CB2, CB3 be major question marks on the back end. But overall, I thought the communication was really good. I did mention that I thought Beanie struggled a little bit, but on the back end, they did a really nice job like passing things off. There was a play where they're playing like man coverage. Beanie gets motioned across the formation. It's like a fast motion where they're trying to, rip and run up the sideline. And him and Eccles did a really nice job like communicating on the fly where Eccles bumped out, took the number one who was in that fast motion. Beanie took the slot guy really at the snap. And I just think it was kind of indicative of what I saw when I was there at training camp, just really harping on the details. Not to say they weren't doing that under Grady Brown, but Gerald Alexander, I think just listening to him the couple of days that I was there in practice, I just think he's a really good communicator and is hopefully going to get the best out of this group with a lot of new faces. So even the backups being able to communicate like that in the first preseason game is certainly encouraging on my end. There was another example. They were running a mesh concept down in the red zone area. And just the linebacker did a nice job, preventing the pick over the middle of the field. But then like James Pierre ends up passing off the crosser to the other side of the formation. And like things like that to me is really encouraging when your backups are playing like that, who, I'm sure they've got valuable reps throughout training camp, but it was just nice to see in comparison to like how poorly they communicated down the stretch last year during the losing streak. That was definitely notable. And, Mason Rudolph, again, I thought he played really well. I thought the offensive line and pass protection gave him a ton of time. He got the ball out quickly, but he was only pressured, I think, on one of his 10 or 11 dropbacks last week. I just think that Mason, like his overall feel for the offense looks pretty solid right now. There's a lot of play action. They moved the launch point. He got the ball out where it was supposed to be. I thought he was pretty accurate as well. So just again, I think it's worth noting that, Mason may not be the flashiest guy in terms of, you're probably not like setting your clock and really anxious to wake up and like watch him play quarterback as opposed to like, some of the other more interesting passers around the league. But at the same time, Aaron Rodgers is over 40 years old. Like there is a good chance that we're going to have to see, like he's going to have to step in and play at some point. Hopefully it's only for like maybe like a game or two or whatever, but that's a very real possibility this season. So the fact that, if he could put together a nice preseason to where they can have, full confidence in him to at least steer the ship in the short term, I'd be really excited about that. Roman Wilson had a couple nice flashes last week. Just want to continue to see them try to get him involved early and often, build that confidence up. That's what the preseason's for. Like no DK Metcalf, no Calvin Austin, who's still recovering from an injury. I would just try to get Roman on the move. I thought the deployment of Roman last week was nice. A lot of condensed formations. Try to get him in stack. Try to use some motions to give him some free releases, and just continue to see his growth and development as a route runner. I think that's going to be extremely important. I think the Steelers using Darnell Washington more as a receiver is definitely like music to Steelers fans' ears. I know that's something that a lot of fans, a lot of Pittsburgh fans have been really clamoring for. And in these type of settings where you got a lot of your top targets on the sidelines, I think this is a perfect opportunity to do so. Continue to use him in the red zone, stretch the field up the seam like we saw last week. Is really nice as well. But I think overall, like the most encouraging thing that we saw last week in terms of how it could affect their overall like in-season results was just the play of the tackles, Broderick Jones, Torrey Fautanu. Fautanu in general going up against Trayvon Walker, huge length disadvantage. Walker's this huge physical specimen with like 35, 36-inch arms. So he was giving up a lot in that regard. But I just thought that Fautanu did a nice job like playing long, playing balanced. Moment just didn't look too big for him. I think he looked really nice physically coming off the knee injury. Had really a pretty clean set of pass pro reps, other than he got called for hands to the face. But you saw him flash like an inside hand bait. You saw him use independent hand usage. I like that a lot as well. And then just overall in the run game, we saw, a really nice rep of him like snapping and climbing to the second level. So the sky's the limit there. And even Broderick Jones, like, Jones struggled earlier in camp. Then he got the groin injury. But overall, like it sounds like over the past, week or two since the pads really came on, that Jones has played pretty well. And I think that was reflected really in the preseason debut as well. Josh Hines-Allen, really nice rusher for Jacksonville. He was pretty much held in check by him as well. I still think that there are some technical things that are a little bit scary with Broderick. But again, that was a nice step in the right direction. Now it's about, can we continue to stack these performances together? The small sample size caveat really goes for everything in preseason, but hopefully the Bucs, we get some nice reps with Jones in the game as well, with them continuing to move the ball down the field. But I think that's pretty much like most of what I'm looking at. And we got some end of the roster type of stuff to kind of cover as well, just before we close. I think Mark Robinson, Carson Bruner, for that fit, they typically keep like five off-ball linebackers. That guy usually only plays special teams, and I think that's how you kind of get a helmet on game days. Robinson's been running ahead of Bruner. I thought he was a little bit better than Bruner last week as well. I would anticipate, if I had to say right now, I'd give the edge to the veteran just in terms of making the 53 man, but that's definitely something to keep an eye on. James Pierre, I think, definitely has like a step ahead in terms of being the last cornerback on the roster. Corey Trice, like the old saying goes, man, it's difficult to make the club from the tub. He's just really been unable to stay healthy. That's really been the unfortunate story. Um, that he's kind of dealt with, unfortunately, since he's been drafted here in Pittsburgh. But Pierre's been really solid. He gave the touchdown last week. I think that was kind of a bang play, really nice anticipatory throw over the middle by Mullins. They brought a blitz, got beat on an end breaker. It happens. But overall, I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen from Pierre throughout the summer so far. He's pretty much only going to play special teams. You don't want him necessarily out there on defense. But I think if he had to play, I don't think it's going to be a total disaster either. So, the other thing I would keep an eye on is like just which of these wide receivers kind of makes a push for the practice squad. I think Scotty Miller is going to end up getting the last spot. I think him and Skoranek will be kind of the last two guys to make the 53. But Keyshawn Williams, I thought, did some really nice things. He had that 50-50 go ball down the sideline to end the fourth quarter last weekend. I think he's got some shiftiness to him. He obviously has some return ability too, so kind of amps up your value a little bit. Rock Taylor's been like a training camp darling. There's been a lot of social media clips of him making plays, back shoulders, things like that. And then even Max Erleman, he caught a nice touchdown last week. That would be, those guys are definitely kind of fighting for the 1 to 2 receiver practice squad spots, in my opinion. Be interested to see if any of those guys get into the game earlier this week and give them some opportunities against some better competition. And then just like lastly, the last thing I'm kind of looking for is just like Caleb Johnson, just trying to get this run game going, man. Like, I think Caleb admitted that just like the speed of the game, I think Tomlin talked about like he thought that there were definitely times where he wasn't necessarily like playing as fast, maybe playing a little bit too timid at the line of scrimmage. I thought his debut was fine. It wasn't great, wasn't horrible either, but definitely looked like a rookie getting his first taste of NFL action. Had the really nice stiff arm on Travis Hunter, being able to bounce around outside. I thought he did a good job, bringing his pads with him on contact, running his feet on contact, but definitely some not hitting the hole with a ton of burst going through a line of scrimmage. And that's kind of what I want to see today. And obviously, his impact in passing situations is going to be huge. It's how he's going to get on the field. Rodgers is, if you've ever, watched him or heard about him, like there's some buddy ball tendencies. Like if Rodgers likes you, you're going to be on the field a lot. If he doesn't like you, you're probably not going to be in the game in crucial down and distance type of situation. So he's got to be able to trust you in pass pro. He's got to be able to trust you when he tries to check the ball down. He had the drop last week where he kind of took his eyes off it and tried to run before, he fully secured it into his body. But definitely some things to be watched for there. I mean, Caleb, if he could come out there and have a nice game, that would be a really nice like film room topic this week. I would be excited about breaking down some run game stuff or just excited in general about them running the ball with some sort of efficiency. So should get a good look at most of the first team offensive line. I don't imagine that Isaac Seumalo is going to play in this one, but Spencer Anderson, I thought he was a little up and down last week, but definitely something to keep an eye on today as well. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry I got this out a little bit later than I intended. Just some personal stuff came up this weekend, but overall really excited about this one. Fired up. Once the game concludes, I'll have some sort of like recap video up within like 12 hours, probably of the conclusion, whether it's like tonight or early tomorrow morning or anything like that. But I'll also have like my dudes and duds column right after the game for SteelersNow.com. Be sure to follow me on social media platforms at Steelers_DB. And I will holler at you guys soon. Be sure to drop me a comment. Let me know who you guys are most looking forward to seeing in tonight's game. I will check you guys very soon. Peace and love.